What is going on, everybody? In today's video, we are going to be analyzing the playfield on Stern Pinball's The Mandalorian. We're going to be going over the good shots, the bad shots, key features, and we're going to do all that right now. Roll the intro. All right, so first things first, we're going to be doing both the Pro and the LE and just switching back and forth. Right now, we are starting with the LE, and simply put, the LE and the Premium, it's the same playfield. That's why we're not going to show the Premium at all for those scoring at home. The first thing to notice that's a huge difference between the Pro and the Premium and LE models is the habit trails leading all the way back to the end lanes. And you'll see them right here on the LE. Anything that's coming back from that little horseshoe ramp and the helix ramp that's on this right ramp right here, and also the return all the way back from the left ramp. It's just that wire form right there, and that actually comes all the way back to these end lanes right here. And then if we go over to the Pro itself actually has just these plastic ramps that show up that lead back to the end lane. This is exactly what you're going to get. You're going to get plastic all the way across the playfield. Another key difference happens at the top end of the playfield. Now there's two big differences right here compared to the Pro. First off, we have this magnet right in this area right here. The child is basically supposed to catch the ball and then drop the ball down into one of the rollover lanes right there. And those rollover lanes basically mystery awards nearly, to where each letter in particular gives you a certain award. What I'm not clear on is if these awards are already determined per letter or if they're just randomized. And then possibly in competition, it's just deterministic. The other thing that's a big difference is also this area right here. If you notice, it has two flippers, obviously, and this little mini playfield right in that area also moves up and down. Now, I don't believe it moves horizontally. I have not seen any videos showing that, but vertically, it definitely does move. And now if we go back over to the Pro to see the differences, as you'll notice right here, there's no magnet in this area, just completely missing, just playfield. And then also, if you notice here, a big difference, it's just one single flipper, and it's a static mini playfield. Something to point out for those that are going to get in on a Pro is if you notice right in this area, it's actually adjustable. So you bring that post out a little bit more to where that would make that rubber not extend quite as far. And my guess would be is that naturally that would actually make this gap right in here a little bit larger and maybe a little bit more difficult. A lightning flipper up there, even with that post drawn outwards a little bit, would actually make it a lot more fun. So just a little food for thought. Maybe, I don't know, I could be the only one that actually wants to do that. The next thing to point out, if you look closely, you will notice right up here that even though there's 5 letters spelling out child, that truthfully only 4 of those letters lead to switches, to rollover switches. I have to generally assume that you would most likely need to be able to move the insert lights from left to right, from right to left, just because there's no actual rollover that leads to that D. It's just kind of just out there by its lonesome. But the CHIL, or the chill, definitely has rollovers. And one of the other big differences compared to the Pro and the LE and the Premium is this little horseshoe scoop right here. Now there's actually a scoop that's dynamic that's right underneath that area and allow the ball to come out and around this little horseshoe right here. You can actually see the little switch just right in this area right here where that ball would exit out. Now at the same time, if that horseshoe scoop is activated, then the ball would actually pop up onto this wire form right here. And looking over here at the Pro, you will notice right off the bat that in fact, that same mech does not exist at all right there. It's just a horseshoe that just comes around right here and just fires right up against that rail. One of the things that I've noticed from watching some of the video, and I'm really curious of, is to see exactly how that ball will react off that rail. If we really take a look at what this angle is compared to the rail, that ball is most likely going to come in hot against that rail. And I really question how much that's going to bounce off there, and if that's going to cause a rattle up there, or if that's going to cause the ball to actually end up, instead of coming down to this right flipper, if it's going to bounce, whether it could be at this joint, or it might even possibly bounce up into the slingshot. And I think a lot of it's going to be dependent on how the game overall is set up by the end user, whether or not you have the back legs jacked all the way up, whether or not you actually have your game fairly level. I mean, all those things and all those variables play a massive part in how that feed's actually going to be. We finally got all that stuff out of the way. Now we can just hang out on one pin and one playfield, and we're just going to stick with the LE. And so pretty much everything from here on out, you can pretty much apply it to both, and now you know the differences, and we'll just go from there. Every modern pinball machine tends to have several key shots, and this pin is no exception, as it does have several shots from the flippers. These shots include the left orbit, left scoop, left ramp, and actually there's a center ramp right here with a pendulum that you'll hit. So the ball will hit the pendulum, keep going up that center ramp. Then there's also a little horseshoe scoop right here that is dynamic, so it can lift up and actually creates a second shot. So that's a 2-for-1 shot right there. Then you got your right ramp, which is the helix ramp. Then you got your right orbit. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Needless to say, that is a lot of shots. So we've seen the 7 major shots in the game, or even 8 if we're counting that horseshoe, that 2-for-1 horseshoe scoop shot. But there's also a couple other shots of note in this game, and one of them happens to be this hunter target area right here. Now, what we see is 3 separate targets to hit, and what that does is it lights your hunter at the end lanes right here. So we can see the insert right here. We also see another insert right there. So there's going to be a lot of times that obviously you're going to be taking pot shots at this, and then whenever you complete that target bank, I assume that you would collect the hunter at one of the end lanes, or maybe even both end lanes. And the other thing that this does, if you notice right here in this area, there's actually an insert that represents the hunter insert, because you'll notice that the colors match up. So what does this do exactly? Well, this will add on a little bit to your playfield multiplier, as you note on the playfield that it actually says all 3 for 5x or 1x right there. So that will add on a playfield multiplier as well. And speaking of playfield multipliers, you'll notice that Boba Fett is right over here. It's 2 targets, and you hit those, and that will light your playfield multiplier. Now, as the way that I've understood it, you can actually keep hitting these targets, and it will essentially reset your multipliers in terms of the time on it. And I think also the way that I understood it is that the multiplier timer acts independently of each other when you take into account Hunter, you take into account the Boba Fett targets, and then also I believe the scope, which is right down in this area right here, and also you have your 3 targets right here. And I believe each scope would also qualify you for a playfield multiplier. So what I'm not clear on when it talks about collecting all 3, I'm guessing just as long as you complete 1 on each one and then activate your playfield multiplier, that you get the 5x, or who knows, maybe if it's a Dwight coded game, I would have to assume that most likely you could probably even stack these multipliers on top of each other while one is currently running. I'm kind of curious to see how that works, but to give you an idea of where these multipliers are at, that's exactly where they are. All right, and another thing to look at right here, you'll notice here on the playfield, you have your missions, you have your encounters, you have your Razor Crest. What it is basically the left and the right ramp will activate your missions. Now, one of the things to keep in mind, you have 5 missions that you will need to play, and that will lead to a wizard mode itself that you'll see right here noted on this insert that takes a callback from a scene in the show that's called I Like Those Odds. Now, whenever you are doing missions or you need to light them again, you got to do both ramps. You'll notice right here, mission, and then to start your mission, you will go into the scoop right here. When we're talking about the Razor Crest, everything leads to this shot right here, this pendulum shot into this ramp right here. And from my understanding, I haven't heard anything about how to relight it. I just know that it's lit at the very beginning. So it's one of those multi-balls that you can get pretty easily in the game, where it might take maybe 3 shots at most. And I just assume that each other multi-ball that you play, that it'll just take X amount of shots over the initial default shot range that you have to do for the first multi-ball. In other words, you just have to shoot it a few more times. And I'm not quite sure if there's any other way to light your locks. I don't notice any inserts out there on the playfield that indicates that you would have to do anything to light a lock, but who knows? Maybe you got to hit a certain amount of ramps. Maybe you got to do something else. As far as I know, all your multi-balls from Razor Crest will all start right there. And another thing, while we're on this, you'll notice that up here with this ramp, right in this area, it's just a small little horseshoe ramp. And it actually has an exit that is right in this area right here. Now, that exit actually just lets the ball drop right back down to the playfield, and it'll continue on right through this little orbit right here. What I'm interested in and what I think will happen is I notice that there's this little mech that's right here. I have to assume that whenever you do start a multi-ball, that most likely that will catch the ball right there, and then it'll start its little light show sequence, its video on the LCD, and then you'll just start to play your multi-ball after that. All right, so back down here on the bottom side of the playfield, you'll notice it also says encounters right in this area. Now, in order to start the encounters, I believe what was said is you have to hit the left ramp, and that will qualify your encounter at the upper playfield. And you'll notice right here, there is an insert that is right in this area. Let me get my trusty telestrator out. It's right there. So anytime that's lit, I assume that that means the encounter is ready. And the encounter that you will find will all lead to this diverter up here, right in this area. And then that will just let the ball just fall right down into the upper playfield, and then you can start playing your encounter from there. So that should pretty much cover most of that. The other things to pretty much go over a little bit is that you'll notice that over here it actually says child on the insert. And so what that leads to is basically you have your left orbit, and there's also one over here on the right orbit as well. And you hit X amount of orbits, and that actually will activate this magnet right here. Now, what I'm curious about is I don't know any reason why you would really want to activate the magnet, especially because you want your inserts, you have to get those for awards. So I don't necessarily want that to be chaotic up there. I want to be able to control it. I want to be able to nudge. I want to be able to make certain decisions at the flippers. And I would have to assume you don't necessarily want to create a lot of chaos up there, especially if there's random awards to get on any of those rollovers. And if you're trying to get a certain award that you haven't got yet, it just makes sense just to avoid the magnet altogether, or at least somehow figure out a way to use your flippers to possibly cancel out the magnetism of the ball. In terms of the entire playfield and literally just looking at the whole scope of how everything was used and where everything is put at, I honestly don't see any shots that I would necessarily consider super dangerous to miss. If you guys notice right off the bat, is that most of everything is all up here in the upper part of the playfield. There's really nothing down here, down from the midline on, that you really need to be aiming for. I can't think of any reason as to why you would want to hit the hunter targets or even Boba Fett unless you have the protection of a multi-ball, just because you're automatically putting the ball out of control. And I really don't see too much of a plus expected value or a reason to really get out of control when you can just pretty much go into multi-ball with one of the easiest shots in the game with that straight up the middle center ramp shot. And then you can also just play out some modes at the same time and let the chaos of a multi-ball during the ball save kind of aid you in starting these other side quests nearly with Hunter and with Boba Fett. And that will kind of feed into the multipliers over the course of the game. So yeah, safe, safe, safe. I cannot say that enough. If you look everything down here, I just don't see anything dangerous right here. And one of the other pluses to this game, there's a lot of shots in here that I see that have backhand potential. If we look right here, it is even possible that even that left orbit could get backhanded. I think it would be tight, but it's possible. Now, I do believe starting modes all day long, left flipper. If you try to hit this from the right flipper, I think you're going to have issues. I think a lot of people are going to have issues with that shot, mainly because it is a fairly tight shot. If you notice, there's a post here, there's a post there. If there's two posts in that area, that means you have no room for error. You have to be precise. You have to be accurate with your shot. There's no rattling that in. Backhand that shot. Do it. It's going to be part of the meta. I guarantee backhanding that shot all day long. Another shot that looks backhandable, that is a word because I just said it, has to be this left ramp right here. Now, from the photos and from the video, this left ramp does look a little high. It looks a little bit up there. By the time you get to the apex, it should be somewhere right around this area. I think the way stern flippers are and how snappy they are, this shot should be able to be backhanded, and then the ball should be able to easily clear that and come all the way around. I don't think we're going to see any instances to where the backhand isn't there on the majority of games that go out. I think that that will end up being a pretty key shot, just because you have to start your modes by using that ramp, and you also start your encounters from there too. And I also believe that the center ramp right here is going to be accessible from both flippers. I can see that definitely being the type of shot that you most likely would want to approach from the right hand side. Now, digging in a little bit closer, I don't believe that this area right here with that little horseshoe scoop, I don't think it would be safe to try to backhand that shot if that horseshoe scoop is activated. Now, without the scoop, if it's up or down or up, up. If it's up and it gives you that way into that horseshoe, I think you can go ahead and backhand it. It looks like it's still a little bit of a tight shot, but I think you can get away with it. Speaking of backhands, as we keep going through this playfield, the right ramp, I'm very curious with this helix ramp right here. I am very curious to see if that can be backhanded with the right flipper. I mean, looking at this, it definitely has callbacks to Medieval Madness, except this seems like it's a little bit closer, just a tad bit, than the one at Medieval Madness, or at least it seems like the helix is just, I don't know, I guess it's more compact is the word that I'm looking for. And when I'm talking about helix, I'm talking about right in this area, guys, just right here. But with as compact as that is, I have to know what the pitch is going to be right in this area. And that will be telling, because if that's not a high pitch, then it should be able to be backhanded with relative ease. But if it's a little bit taller, that could be a potential shot that might have some rejects. But I think for the most part, I'm pretty sure you can be able to sneak a ball up there and get enough oomph on it that it'll actually get all the way around. Now, I don't necessarily see a way that this shot right here could be backhanded. Maybe it's possible. Telestrator gone wild. Maybe it's possible, but I'm not quite sure. Maybe like a rolling backhand might work. I'm going to make a prediction. I don't think you'll be able to do it from a cradle, but I think if the ball is slowly going up to the tip of that flipper, I think you'll be able to do it then. I will say the huge caveat to all this is, if you notice, looking right down here at the bottom, these right here, I'm not so sure with the spacing from the flipper to the post. I am not so sure it's going to be easy to post pass on this game. It might prove to be slightly difficult. I know, personally speaking, on Stranger Things, I have a more difficult time post passing on that game than most sterns that are out there. And this looks very similar in terms of dimensions. Now, it could just be my eyes playing tricks on me, but I think the potential is there that some of the post passing might prove to be a little bit difficult from time to time, depending on how your machine is set up. That's kind of a big deal. Machine setup. And there you have it. That about wraps it up. That just gives you a clue of where all the shots are at. I don't think there's much else to say about it until we find out exactly how the rule sets work. We can only just kind of guess where things are. That's all I got. Thank you guys for watching. I greatly do appreciate it. Leave a comment down below. What do you guys think? Do these shots look good? Do they look bad? Do the features look fun? Do they look terrible? Let me know. You guys take care. Later, guys.